with the goal of influencing the greater of humanity. I know that seems like an awful big goal and a lofty goal, but I think it will be, as we spoke in my group, it will be the long game. But I think Alpha Chi will do the right thing by starting that process or continuing that process and maybe focusing a little more keenly. And we look forward to collecting all of the feedback and spending some time this summer really chewing on what you have been able to provide us this week. So thank you for staying for those sessions and for providing your input. So I think Katie maybe is ready to give us our Friday brief debrief, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you to everyone for participating in all of our events today. Our collaborative research presentations were just fantastic, and I hope everyone enjoyed visiting with our student presenters and their Q&A sessions. If you'd like to connect more with our student presenters or your other fellow delegates, make sure to click the Launch Chat button at the top right of the Alpha Chi Virtual Campus. You'll be brought to a place where you can find each student presenter and you can chat with them about their research, ask them questions, things like that. And you can also connect with other attendees that you've met throughout the weekend so far. Tomorrow, we have several alumni members joining us to share their thoughts about Alpha Chi and how it has impacted their lives. We will also finally present the Distinguished Alumni Award to Tana Lala Pritchard of East Central University. She's zooming in all the way from Malaysia to share a special message with us, and I hope you'll come hear what she has to say. You'll also have the chance tomorrow to connect with other delegates in our signature chapter development sessions. We'll have a variety of topics for student and sponsor delegates, so make sure you come by to gather insights to bring back to your local chapters. And with that, I'm going to send it to Levy for one more announcement.
Thank you so much, Katie, and it's great to see you guys back here. Hello again, I'm Levy. I'd like to first announce the winner of our door prize, and that would be Samantha Wilkie. Congratulations, you'll be receiving an AX swag bag of goodies. So we'll be sure to surprise you with some. Yes. Congrats to you, Samantha. The Great Race is on the schedule this evening, so please be sure to go ahead and add it to your calendar. One team will win the grand prize, which is $55, a $55 Audible gift card for each team member. But that won't be the only prize. Everyone who signs up shows up to play tonight will be entered in to win a door prize drawing, where at least one out of every 5 players will win a $10 DoorDash gift card. One more note of housekeeping. Since we want you to come join the Great Race, we're going to postpone our Alpha Chi Central Coffee Chat until after the game concludes. So come join us from 8:45 p.m. Central Time to 9:15 p.m. Where we'll be excited to hear all about your journeys across the virtual globe. So thank you and join us. Please join us.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great being with you today, and enjoy a little break. Go stretch and get some dinner, and just thank you so much for being here. And we will hopefully see you at the Great Race. You know, we just really want as many people to come as possible. I think it'll be more fun, the more the merrier. And so that's why we're doing that tonight. So come do that, and then come tell us all the things about where you went and everything else. Next year is our Centennial. 99 years may seem like a long time, but is it really? A lot has changed in that span of time, but some would say that many things haven't changed enough. Given the period of American history, the South Texas start to what would later become Alpha Chi, and the culture of academia at the start of the 1900s, we can't be assured that Alpha Chi was not also complicit in systems of discrimination. We have no direct evidence at this time that Alpha Chi was ever intentionally or proactively guilty of discrimination. After all, the primary basis of membership in Alpha Chi is just a high class ranking as a junior or senior graduate student, not any physical or mental characteristic or socioeconomic status. However, it's clear to us now that the history of higher education in America was not one of equal opportunity for every student. Therefore, membership in organizations such as Alpha Chi, designed in and for those systems, cannot claim they've always been above reproach in these matters. While there's nothing we can do to go back and change that, we can certainly acknowledge it and determine what can be done now and in the future to repair the damage that has been done and to avoid complicity in that or any new system of dysfunction. I say all of that to acknowledge that this is how systemic inequality lingers to this day and will not go away without our intentional effort. Part of the effort is to look to the past, beyond our assumptions, and let that knowledge of what came before help craft a brighter future that works to seek truth and justice to help level the playing field. For Alpha Chi, looking to the past is easier to achieve while the people who are involved are still with us and can share with us their firsthand experiences and memories. That's where the science of oral history comes in. To share with us his passion for history, I introduce Dr. Alfred Clark, Professor of Humanities at the University of La Verne in California. Dr. Clark has served many years in a variety of Alpha Chi roles, such as chapter sponsor, which he still is, a Region 7 Secretary Treasurer, and member of the National Council. He brought the idea of a Centennial Celebrating Oral History project for Alpha Chi to our attention a few years ago. And I appreciate him coming to speak with us today, and I hope you find his excitement for history and historical archiving contagious. Dr. Clark, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Executive Director Noah. It's always a delight to be at Alpha Chi conventions, and thank you all for coming to this meeting today. As many of you know, there is a 75th anniversary book on Alpha Chi that was written by Dr. Robert Sledge by the title of Scholarship and Character. But that was one book, one man. What we have the opportunity now for the 100th anniversary, well, this is the 99th year, so this is coming into the 100th year, is for all of us, all of you, every single one of you to contribute to the history that we're collecting for the Centennial. And how we're going to do it, we're going to do it with oral history. Many of you probably know what oral history is, but basically it's going out and recording people's memories and recollections and their observations and so forth. Of course, memory isn't perfect. So like any other history, oral history isn't perfect by any means. But if you collect more and more oral histories, you have an opportunity to get a fuller picture than for just one or two people to go sit down and write a history on the basis of written documents and so forth. Of course, oral histories can be used. They are primary sources as well. So there will be a time, I'm sure, maybe next year, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 50 years from now, when somebody writes another and more detailed written history, and these oral histories will be there. The nice thing about oral history is that everybody gets to speak. Normally, when history is written, it's written to the presidents and, well, and the executive directors and the deans and the faculty and so forth, particularly in an organization such as Alpha Chi, where the focus is students, and students graduate and go on and do other things, and we may not get their stories. But here, by collecting stories of everybody, everybody in this room today, everybody in your various chapters at your separate schools, former members of, not former, or your member for life, but former people at your school who are members, all those people can be interviewed to get a fuller picture of what what Alpha Chi is at your colleges, what they did when they went to conventions, what service projects they worked in, all the various aspects of Alpha Chi. So what I'm hoping that we do together collectively is create separate oral history collections of every one of your local chapters and what they've done. Some of your chapters have been at your schools for years, and sometimes decades. It'd be interesting to go back and see how many of the former members you can find. They might be in your faculty. See how many former sponsors you can find. And what are you going to ask them? You're going to ask them about what happened in the chapter when they were members. You're going to ask them about what conventions they went to. You're going to ask them about their service projects. You're going to ask them about all the other kinds of things that they did and what happened to them after they graduated as well. There's so many things that can be collected. And of course, what happens to oral history is that it will be placed in archives so that others can use them. There's a national archive for Alpha Chi where they all will reside, but it's also a service project for your own institution, which you can do as well by putting them in the oral history collections in the libraries at your institution. So that's a service project that's on the side. It will be interesting overall to see what kinds of things we can collect about the national conventions, what kinds of things we can collect about the regional conventions. Many of you know that there was a time when regional conventions were in the regions and at various colleges and universities. So to get a full history of all those events and times would be quite interesting. And of course, there's many other parts of the project that you can expand upon. Laura Nova just talked a bit about the history of that 99-year history and all those kinds of things we don't know about. We know when the conventions took place. We know something about the service projects and so forth. We know very little about, because it wasn't written down necessarily, about the kinds of participation of Alpha Chi students in such things as the civil rights movement and other kinds of things over the years. So there's lots of things that can be collected that will be useful not only to the history of Alpha Chi and the history of your individual institutions, but also about the history of the United States. Now you're saying, how can we do this? How can we make oral history? Well, as it happens, oral history is really quite a simple matter today because we all have these. We all have these, and with tablets and phones, you can collect interviews very easily all the time. And what's interesting in this era of virtual everything, in this last year, I've collected or have helped collect with my students over 100 interviews using Zoom. And what the amazing thing then is, you have the opportunity to go through Zoom or WebEx or some of these other programs to go out and interview people who once were at your institution and now are around the world. I've interviewed people in Europe and in Australia and so forth. You got to worry about time zones, but you still can do it. So you can do it very easily. And what kind of skills do you need? Well, you need the skills that you learn and that you come in with into Alpha Chi. You need to be a conversationalist. You have to be able to talk to people. I know you can do that. You have to be intelligent. Well, I certainly know that you're intelligent. So it's the kind of thing that is perfect for Alpha Chi. It's perfect to, not only for our history, but for the service project that you potentially could do for your institution by beginning or expanding your oral history collections. It's all there. And then I'll just add very briefly, because I only have a couple more minutes to talk about this part, is that you also can use these things not only for the purpose of primary sources for written histories, you have the opportunity to make documentaries out of them as well, because your cell phone, but particularly your tablet and your computers have built into them the kinds of things that allow you to create documentaries from that. And what I'm going to do right now is to pause briefly and to have a very short but important session on oral history, how one conducts oral history, but also to allow us all to hear a little bit of the history of the institution while oral history is taking place. Because we're fortunate today, maybe you already know this because you can see the various videos on the screen, that we have one of the longest serving executive directors with us, Dr. Dennis Organ, who was the executive director from, I think, 1994 to 2012. And what I'm going to do is conduct a very short interview. He's promised to give a longer interview at a later time to put into the archives. But for right now, I'm going to start us out. And how does one do that? Well, one starts out by every interview. You want to be able to identify the person. You want to give the date and the time. The time's going to be difficult because I'm in California and he's in Arkansas. So I'll try to do it with his time rather than mine. And then I'll just start a conversation, and we'll do that for 8 to 10 minutes, and give you an idea of some of the history of Alpha Chi, as well as how one does it. So this is an interview with Dr. Dennis Organ, who was executive director of Alpha Chi and dean at Searcy College and a number of other things. This interview is taking place on Friday, April 9th, 2021 at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. And Dr. Organ, how did you come to Alpha Chi?
Well, as a student member. In my junior year, I was invited to join the chapter of Alpha Chi at Harding College, as it was then before it became known as university. Dr. Joe Pryor, who is one of the very most important people in the history of Alpha Chi, at the time was the chapter sponsor, and shortly he was to become the National Secretary Treasurer of Alpha Chi, which was the position that was a forerunner of the Executive Director. It was totally a volunteer job, but little did I know that I would be following in his footsteps with Alpha Chi in later years, but he was a wonderful example to me. So that was my introduction.
It's wonderful that you could tell us about Dr. Pryor, since he's such an important person in Alpha Chi. What would you like to say about Dr. Pryor?
Well, he was a real servant at heart. He was involved in so many important positions at our school. He was, at the time that he invited me, he was the dean of the college. He was the advisor of the school yearbook. He was the athletic representative to the conference that our school was in. Had his hand in all sorts of things, and he taught. He was a mathematics and physics teacher. I later had him as a teacher. Well, actually, I'd had him once for chemistry. I said physics, but it was chemistry. Had him as a chemistry teacher in my sophomore year of school. And then my senior year, I had him for a mathematics class. But he and his wife, who worked with him with Alpha Chi, did all of the registrations, all the correspondence for the organization. Amazing amount of work. And he served until he retired from his academic position, and then Alpha Chi invited him to be the first executive director working on a part-time salary, the first salaried executive director that we had. And he was in that position until 1993. At the end of the year, he retired, and I succeeded him. By then, I had become the editor of publications for Alpha Chi. I had started that in 1975, so that was 15 plus years. And I had done that and worked closely with him because of that, and went to all the conventions and everything because I was involved with kind of keeping a history of Alpha Chi with our newsletter and plus publishing our student undergraduate scholarship and the minutes of the organization in paper form.
Well, between you and Dr. Pryor and you, it sounds like you were Alpha Chi, and of course, Alpha Chi was situated at Harding University. Is that correct?
Well, yes, because it was wherever the Secretary Treasurer was, and that's when that came to him. He kept all the records and files there, and then after he retired. Maybe before, I've lost track of the time, but Harding granted some office space, especially for the Alpha Chi headquarters, and we had that until just a couple of years ago when the offices were moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. But that was a long and profitable relationship because we were able to benefit from the kind of a staff status at the university in terms of local expenses, telephone, computer support, and so forth.
Now, you mentioned that you started doing publications at Alpha Chi in 1975. What publications were there at that time?
Well, before I was hired to do that, and I say hired because I got I think $1,000 a year for that work, which was a help to a young faculty member. The publications were the responsibility of the vice president of the National Council. The vice president also was in charge of conventions and the programming for conventions and all the arrangements and publications as well. It got to be much too large a job for a volunteer. And so the decision was made to invite somebody to do publications separately, and I was chosen for that. At the time, there was a newsletter that went out hopefully once a year before I joined the staff. The Recorder, which included all the minutes of the organization, the financial statements, the reports of the regions, and then we also published some undergraduate research. That came out once a year. And that continued after I took the position. We eventually added a second newsletter issue a year and expanded the size of the Recorder, which the magazine or the journal was called. In later years, we split all of that up and we took all the proceedings out in one volume and all the student papers and so forth were in a separate volume. And then we added an alumni volume at one point for several years. So at one point we had 3 issues of that a year plus 2 newsletters.
You mentioned the regions. Were there 7 regions when you came to Alpha Chi and in first as a student and then in 75 as a member?
I don't know for sure. I think in the 60s, which was when I became a member, that's when the regions really began to be broken out. Originally, there had been one region. It wasn't called a region because it was Alpha Chi, but everything was in Texas. And then back in the 30s, they began to add some chapters in other states. And then eventually they separated into 2 regions. Most of them still were in Texas, but Region 2 took in Oklahoma and Arkansas and so forth. I think when I joined Alpha Chi on the staff, the Region 7 in the West had been called, those chapters were just called the National Council chapters. They were administered by the national office, but they were put into their own formal region, I think in the late 70s. And that completed kind of the geographic distribution in the country. The Region 6, the numerical sequence suggests when they were added. Region 3 in the Southeast, big area. Region 4 in the Plains states primarily. Region 5 in the upper Midwest, and then Region 6 in the Northeast. And then the West for Region 7.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Organ. I'm looking forward to expanding this interview at another time. That was a wonderful thing. I'm sure everybody was delighted, as I was, in hearing you talk. And you showed perfectly how interviews in oral history go, and your mind is so clear and fresh that it gives a tremendous amount of additional material for future historians. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn this back to Laura Noah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness, my cheeks are cramping from smiling so much. I have sure missed getting to see and work with Dennis Organ every day. I was about 21 when he hired me to work part-time, and then I was fortunate to work with him until he retired in 2012. Safe to say his mentorship is the main reason I'm with Alpha Chi today. So thank you, Dennis. And thank you, Al, for that wonderful interview and for showing us how that was unrehearsed. So showing us how natural and easy that can be. And I hope that encourages everyone here in this room. As you can see, we really want your chapter to spend this year capturing the stories and recollections of anyone in your chapter's past, and send those to the national office so we can catalog, archive, and ultimately share them with each other at our Centennial Convention next year in Austin. We will come up with, we have some procedural materials that are not quite ready for publication yet, but we're going to get those out to chapters very soon to explain how to send those things to us and the different formatting and forms you might need to conduct and get all of the permission you need for an oral history interview like this. Where's I lost my place. And like Dr. Clark mentioned, your college will benefit as well from these efforts. And what a great service you've then provided, not only Alpha Chi and your college, but also the benefit to the people you interview by listening to their experiences and thus showing them the esteem that you and Alpha Chi as a society has for them. So just really excited. This turned out even better than I could have hoped for. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you, Dr. Organ. This has been a blast. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to interview everybody in more in depth. We have a long list of people that we have started that we want to interview. And your chapter may have a list. I know we have previous and recently retired chapter advisors who still live in town near the college where they served both the college and Alpha Chi for decades. And before they get away from us, please make it an absolute priority in this next year to go and have these conversations, if for no other reason than to show that we still care and that their work meant a lot to us. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. So now we're at time for, we're up to part 2 of this session, and we are in the looking ahead session. So I'm going to let Katie take the mic here and tell you what we're going to do here in these listening sessions that are going to be facilitated by our current National Council leadership. Take it away, Katie.
Thank you, Laura. That was wonderful. I have always wished I'd spent as much time around Dr. Organ as, you know, the people I work with. They have nothing but wonderful things to say about him, and that was just a special treat for me. Thank you. Thanks to a couple of our council officers, Dr. David Jones and Dr. Carl Havlock. They've worked up some discussion questions for the listening sessions that we're about to have. So we are going to open up several breakout rooms, and we'll be assigning people randomly across the breakout rooms, and each breakout room will be joined by a couple of national council members who will facilitate the conversation and be the ears of Alpha Chi's leadership. Council members, we ask that one of you in each breakout room, please click the record button at the bottom of your Zoom screen once your breakout begins. We're not going to post those anywhere, but we want to make sure that we don't miss any of the great feedback from our members. We want to make sure we hear. If we're going to ask what you're having to say, we want to make sure we hear it. Laura, I see your hand raised.
I was just going to say, we're going to have several questions, leading questions, but this conversation can go where this conversation goes. So in your room, work with the facilitators. There's no telling which nugget, which little thing we're going to be able to capture and seize on, and that will spur other ideas once we're able to share them with the council, with the staff. We plan on having a summer retreat, virtual retreat this summer, and we're going to be doing a lot of discussing about where Alpha Chi goes in the future and what we want to focus on. And we really need to hear from you right now. So I hope you'll stay around for these breakout rooms and give us just be patient with us as we get everybody where they need to be, and then we get the moderators in there. Thanks, Katie.